Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts Beauty Tips Podcast, the show that gives you advice on everything from hair to fashion to skincare products. We'll talk about the latest trends in makeup, hairstyles, and anti-aging remedies. And we'll cover all of the newest fashion trends. If you have an interest in or questions about the beauty and fashion trends that might work best for you, the Golden State Media Concepts Beauty Tips Podcast has got you covered.
Welcome to the GSMC Beauty Tips Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Colleen, and let's talk about some beauty stuff. So I thought that we would talk about permanent makeup today. It's become such a popular thing once again, but in a different way than it was before, and I really thought it would be a good thing to talk about. Now, permanent makeup has been a thing before, like tattooing your eyeliner or your eyebrows on, but that was more in the sense of an actual tattoo and not so much as a beauty thing itself. These are a lot different. And let's start out with the one that's most popular and that I see everywhere and that you guys have probably actually seen everywhere as well. And that is microblading. Now, microblading is basically tattooing your eyebrows. It's filling in your eyebrows with this ink to make them look fuller and more natural, and basically so you don't really have to fill in your eyebrows at all. Now, I see a lot of influencers who do this, and it seems very popular, and there's actually a place near me, which we don't get a lot of places that do a lot of very trendy things where I live, but we actually ended up getting a few places that will do microblading, which I found absolutely fascinating. But me personally, I don't think it's for me. I mean, I'd love to try it, but I'm also very skeptical when it comes to a lot of this stuff, just because it's not 100% permanent like getting your eyebrows full on tattooed is, but it's still, I can't play as much as I would like to makeup wise with my eyebrows. It would be, they're just kind of there. Now, let's talk about how long this lasts. So this will fade over time, and they say about 12 to 18 months before you should go back in for a touch-up. Now, I've seen some people online who've actually gone a little longer, and it does seem to stay. And I really think that it is up to you, like to your specific skin and all that stuff, how long it's going to stay and how long it's going to fade. Now, they say that you can also come in as you feel you need it for a little bit more or a little bit less. I don't know, but they do recommend mostly that you let it almost fade all the way out before you come back in to get a little bit more put on, which I 100% would agree with, because I wouldn't want to just keep beating up my eyebrows with some, needles and whatnot. I think it's more of like a blade that they use. It is more of a blade, excuse me. I'm like burping and I'm losing it, and we just started this. But this is more of a blade with the ink that they've mixed specifically for your eyebrows, like to match your eyebrows as best as possible. Also, when it comes to this stuff, this is not something a regular tattoo artist can do. This is something that a person that has been specifically trained to do microblading can do. So don't go into some sort of tattoo artist and expect them to be able to do this, because this is not what they can do. Now, let's talk about some potential risks. Now, infection is a potential risk no matter what. So this also goes along the lines of you need to go to somebody who is very versed in this, somebody who has been trained specifically to do microblading. Now, when it comes to anything else, you're giving yourself a possibility for infection if you're just kind of like, sure, we'll go to that. Do your research. Do your research before you go in to doing this. The aftercare is very, very, very important. They say you need to keep the area dry, stay out of the sun for around like 10 days or so. And they'll give you a bunch of stuff that you need to do, like your aftercare of what you should do to take care of it. And you should follow that aftercare to a T. That goes with this, but that also goes with just regular tattoos. And you know, you should be fine if you do it that way, but just do your research. There's also a possibility you could be, allergic to something in the ink. So do your research when it comes to this. Also, your artist should schedule a follow-up appointment for about 6 weeks or so to ensure that everything's healed properly and that you're happy with the results. So you're not just going in and being like, you know, this healed, I really hope that it's fine. You know, they want you to come back in to make sure everything's going the way that it should be. And you should definitely go to that follow-up and go, the way that you do. And, you know, they can fix anything that you might have a problem with at that appointment or talk to you about the best way to do something if you're having some issues. So really do your research on who's going to do your microblading and, you know, make sure that you follow up and you keep in contact if you're having any sort of issue and just kind of keep all that, you know, go. And they say a lot of times if you do take care of it as precisely as you should be, it can last to about a year, sometimes over a year. And just do your research. That's the main thing here. Do your research. Also, let's talk about some costs. Now, this is not a cheap thing to do. Now, they say that this could cost you anywhere from $600 to $1,000. I've seen it for less, but this goes along with just any sort of tattooing or anything in general is do your research, find who you like, and save the money and pay it if it's really what you want to do. Just save the money and pay it if it's really what you want to do. Don't go for something cheap just because it's cheap, because you're probably going to get a cheap result. You know, you're going to get what you pay for. So if you find an artist you really, really like that's been doing this for years and years and they, you know, their results are phenomenal and everybody loves it, and you really want to go to this person, but they're a little expensive, just save the money if it's something you really, really, really feel like you would like to get done. Just save the money and then go to that person. Don't go looking for somebody who's going to be cheaper, because they're probably not going to be better. Just saying. Also, costs will vary depending on where you are. This is just the basic cost that I saw kind of across the board when it came to this, but it is going to change depending on where you are or where, you know, or what you're getting done. That's just how it goes. I just want you to, with any of these, just do your research because that's the most important thing. Now, microblading is very popular and there are a lot of people who have been trained to do microblading, so you do have a lot of options when it comes to places to go. There is probably a place in your area that does it. You just need to do research. But if you feel like the people in your area are not up to, you know, the standard that you'd like, and you're really, really, really invested in getting this done, maybe traveling for it might be a good idea for you. Once again, it's all personal preference, up to you. I personally do not think I'm going to do this. I like to play with makeup and I'd like to be able to change up my eyebrows as much as possible. And I can do that just with, you know, the eyebrows that I have there. I've thought about it before. I did my research and, I just decided personally it was not for me. And that's okay. It may not be for you, but if it is for you, this is kind of, you know, what you can do and what you're looking to get yourself into. Now, I'm going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk about some more different permanent makeup procedures.
The GSMC Life and Happiness podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Back to the GSMC Beauty Tips podcast. Now, before the break, we were talking about permanent makeup, and we were talking specifically about microblading for your eyebrows. Now, let's move on to a different permanent makeup that has slowly kind of become popular and kind of started to become more popular as microblading became more popular, and that is lip tinting or lip blushing. Now, this is a procedure of adding a color that's slightly deeper in pigment than your normal lip color to give you a sort of blurred, beautiful lip effect, kind of like you don't need to really add much to your lips. They say that this is pretty intense. Just letting you know that right off the bat. They say it's pretty intense because the skin on the lips doesn't really retain pigment as well as the rest of your skin and can require more than, just one retouch. And they say it's pretty painful as well. They say it looks beautiful, and I've seen photos, I've seen videos of people doing this as well, and it does look absolutely beautiful. And they can also do it to help you define your shape a little bit more or make your shape a little bit more symmetrical without, getting lip filler or anything like that. But this is more for the people who just want a little bit of extra color, a little bit more evenness, that kind of stuff. They say that this works for people who have a high pain tolerance. Lips are sensitive, very sensitive, and the pain is pretty bad, they say, and the swelling can be bad as well. It can it can leave you after you get it done looking almost like you've kind of gotten lip injections with the swelling and possible bruising. I don't think as much bruising as the swelling as what I've seen. Now let's talk about how long this will last. They say once you've been through like the multiple touch-up appointments, the color should last about a year. So keep in mind that you're going to have to do multiple appointments to get this done. This is not something that you can go and get done in one go. Or this is not like microblading where basically if you take care of it as well as it is, you love the product after your first after appointment. I'm looking for words that I'm losing slowly, but after you've gone back in to them to make sure that everything's healing well and looking the way you like, that will probably last to about a year. But with this lip blushing or lip tinting, this is going to take a few different passes to get it done, and it is painful. I just want to put that out there, but it is actually pretty popular. Now let's talk about some potential risks when it comes to getting this done. Now, there's a higher incidence of you being possibly allergic to red pigment in tattoos. It's unfortunate, but a lot of times you can develop this allergy, and unfortunately there's no easy fix once it's done. that you can use correction laser to remove the red pigment, but it almost always turns black. So just kind of keep that in mind when it comes to this kind of thing. Once again, it all comes down to like doing your research and really kind of going in and talking to somebody about this, doing a consultation, and figuring out the best steps to go about it in the first place, and then to kind of work off of that and find your best way to go about it, and even if it is for you or not, because it might not be for you. It could be dangerous and it will be painful. Just putting that out there if you're going to do it. Once again, just do your research. That's the big thing with this entire podcast, is going to be do your research if you really want to get something like this done. Let's talk about cost now. So, you're looking at about $1,400 for lip blushing, which will include touch-up appointments as needed for your look. That's once again just a basic cost that I found across the board. It could be more expensive, it could be less expensive, but they say that this is the basic cost for this. And do keep in mind that it does include, touch-up appointments, or it might include. That's something you do need to look into too, is, what am I going to pay you, and is it going to include any touch-up appointments to achieve the look that I'm, the desired look that I'm looking for? That's a really important thing to talk about when you go in for any sort of consultation. Besides, any sort of issues that might possibly arise and what you need to look for and all that kind of stuff. And remember, this is also not just your basic tattoo artist. This is somebody that has been trained specifically to do lip tinting or blushing. And you should find somebody that is versed in this specifically. I know that there is nobody in my area that does this, so this would be something, if I got it done, which I am not going to personally, but if I got it done, I would have to go out of state for, so just keep that in mind. This is something that you might need to travel for, and that can affect your decision whether you do it or not, depending on what your price range for this whole thing is, because you might need to pay for a hotel or an Airbnb or whatever, or stay at a friend's house or something like that on top of paying for that. And then also for, travel, food, drink, gas, all that stuff, So just kind of keep that in mind, that this might not be in your area, and just once again to do your research. Now, like I said just a minute ago, I personally am not going to do this. This personally is not for me. First off, it's out of my price range. Second off, there's nobody in my area. And also, I know that I am not allergic to red inks, but I just don't want to take that chance. And I like being able to change my lip color with lip pencils and lipsticks. I like to be able to change it up a lot, and that's just how I feel about it. But I do know people who really would like to do something like this because of uneven pigment in their lips, or also just to fix up a lip line or something around those lines. And I can definitely see something being done that way. Me personally, as a makeup artist, I like to change things up as much as possible by just using makeup itself. That's why these things are not 100% for me, but I definitely wanted to talk to them, or talk about them to you guys, because I know that there are a lot of people who are considering getting these procedures done, and I just want to kind of show you the pros and cons and the possible risks and the around price of these things, just so you kind of have an idea of what to go off of a little bit while you're looking into research. Just wanted to let you guys know about that. So we've talked about microblading and this lip and blush tinting. We will continue to talk about these different types of permanent makeup, and I think after the break, we're going to talk about some permanent eyeliner. Now I'm going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will talk about that.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the GSMC Beauty Tips podcast. Now, before the break, we were talking about lip blushing and tinting. This entire podcast, we are talking about permanent makeup. Now, I wanted to bring it on over to permanent eyeliner. Now, I've seen a lot of people who have gotten permanent eyeliner done, but I've seen a lot of people get it done from a tattoo artist and not so much I guess you would call it beauty tattoo artist, somebody who's very versed in this. Now, let's talk about what this is. This is eyeliner that sits within or above the lash line to give the appearance of fuller lashes. The traditional eyeliner tattoo is placed above the lash line, leaving the effect of a distinct eyeliner. Whereas lash enhancement is more along the lines of a subtle look just to kind of make that area look a little bit fuller. And that is the one that I've seen become the most popular as of late. Now, this is kind of for the person who doesn't leave home without liner on or just is on the go, that kind of person. This will last you, once again, about 12 to 18 months. And the potential risks are the same as brows and lips when it comes to this, where it's the risk of infection. And this one is probably the one that people do the most and kind of just, it's not as intense as the microblading and definitely not as intense as the lip blushing or tinting. Now, this will cost you about $400 to $800. Once again, that's just kind of a round number that I found, and this is something you really need to do your research on, just like everything else. Find somebody who does this all the time, somebody who has a lot of clients that are very happy with what was done, and just, do your research. I just wanted to add that in there since this is something that a lot of people do get done. And let's move on to a different one. Scar camouflage. Now, scar camouflage is tattooing of the skin with flesh-colored pigments to hide a scar. This is most well known to be used for mastectomy scars, although they can basically cover any sort of scars or stretch marks or acne scars or anything like that when it comes to this specific procedure. They start by assessing the scar and then custom blending the pigment to match your skin exactly. They use fine layers, less than 1 millimeter below the skin's surface. And this will take, just like the lip blushing or the lip tinting, more than one session, probably around 2 or 3 sessions, scheduled 5 to 6 weeks apart to allow healing between sessions. So this is not something that's going to be done the first time you go in. And let's talk about who this kind of procedure is for. This is for people with scars that are lighter than their natural skin color. Majority, that's what it is. This treatment doesn't work well on scars that are more on the brown or purple reddy tones. In this case, laser and bleaching treatments would probably be something that you would want to go with first. And they say, well, this treatment works well with, I'm going to butcher these words, hypertrophied scars, HYPERT or TROPHIED scars. Keloid scars are not a good candidate for this treatment. The scar needs to be fully healed before you decide to do anything like this. Just as caution, don't just go and do this because you need a fully healed scar. Don't go on top of a scar that's not healed yet. That's just how this goes. Now let's talk about how long this lasts. Scar tissue is a thicker texture and has no sweat glands. So scar camouflage can actually last longer than other types of these permanent makeups do. Clients' results will last for a couple of years, especially with like minimal exposure to sun and, you know, gentle skincare, that kind of thing. Now, let's talk about some risks when it comes to this. The most common risk is just bad artists. That's the really big one, is finding somebody who's not going to mix a good color to match your skin tone. And research is so big. That's the biggest risk when it comes to this, is just finding somebody. You might not find somebody who can match your skin color perfectly, and then that's just going to leave you with something completely different on top of that scar, and it's not going to look very good. It's going to look pretty bad. So once again, do your homework, do your research. Just really find somebody who's done this a million times and is very well versed in this and very well trained in this, especially this one, because this could, you know, end up in a very, very terrible result. So just remember, this is something you really, really want to do your research on, just like all of these, but this one especially, because they could mix specific colors that might turn specific colors because of the molecular structure of the color itself. So browns will often turn a little bit more orange over time, and whites might remain permanently super, super bright, which is the complete opposite effect you're going for when it comes to covering a scar, a light scar on your body. You don't want to make that scar look more, emphasized than it already is, and you also don't want, if you're adding a little bit of brown pigment to match your skin color in there, for that to start to turn orange, and then you have some sort of oranged splotch on wherever you're doing this on your body. So just do your research. Once again, that's a big, big thing with this. I've seen a lot of people do this because they have scars that are very large from traumatic incidents, and it can really help boost your confidence, or just help you kind of feel more like yourself. And I really appreciate that this is a thing. And when it comes to this, just do your research. Like, this one is one of those ones where you really, 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 really need to find somebody you like. Now let's talk about price. So this price varies depending on the size of the scar, but like as a round number, a regular kind of number that I found was around $2,500 to $4,500. And this is not a cheap procedure. This is a lot different than the other procedures. This is something that is going to be a little bit more expensive because they are mixing things to your exact skin color, and this needs to be done a lot more gently, and this is something you need to go in multiple times for, to get it up to a space where it's covering that scar. Just keep that in mind. This is not a cheap procedure. I mean, they're all not very cheap, but this one is a lot more expensive than the other ones because of, the time and the effort that goes into everything. Now let's take a quick break, and when we come back, let's talk about some freckle tattoos.
Do you want to be healthier, yet you just don't know what to do? All these shows telling you this and that, but nothing seems to work. Well, listen close. Golden State Media Concepts has got something great for you. The Health and Wellness Podcast dedicated to workout trends, healthy eating habits, diet, and everything about healthy living. Join us in our banters as we help you not just live life to the fullest, but live it to the healthiest.
The GSMC Beauty Tips podcast. Now, before the break, we were talking about permanent eyeliner and scar camouflage permanent makeup. Now, this entire podcast, we've been talking about permanent makeup in and of itself, and we've talked about microblading, lip blushing and tinting, permanent eyeliner, scar camouflage, and now I want to bring it on to something that's a little bit more on the, I guess you would call, a rebellious side of the permanent makeup world, and this is freckle tattoos. Now, freckles, fake freckles in general have become so popular as of late, especially with the Snapchat and Instagram filters that have the freckles on them, and people like the way they look so much better. I've seen a lot of henna tattoo freckles that people do on themselves. You can find a lot of videos on those, and those are fine too, but also I found out while doing a different podcast research that there is some dyes in some henna that can be permanently scarring to your skin. So just be wary of what's inside your henna before you put it on your face. But let's talk about the permanent method of this, freckle tattoos. Now, all of these are permanent, but technically semi-permanent. Now, freckle tattoos, how does this work? So this is more of a fading cosmetic tattoo than anything else that we talk about in this specific one. So what they do is they will draw on the freckles with a pencil and then use a stick and poke technique to tattoo each freckle. They say each one takes about 4 or 5 different pokes when it comes to this. They use a diluted pigment so they can build the freckle up, but it will also end up looking like a soft and natural underneath the skin freckle once everything has been completely healed. They also can apply numbing cream for this, and they do that as well for some of the other ones as well. This is specifically for people who just want freckles, or for people who have gotten a little bit older and have maybe lost some freckles and would like to bring those back. Now, this is something that I personally would not do because once again, I'm a makeup artist, and if I really want fake freckles, I can just draw them on. I have my own freckles, and I like to use light makeup to show those through instead of so much as add extra to bring them out. Now let's talk about how long this lasts. So most clients will return for a touch-up a year or two after, depending on how quickly the freckles are fading or how dark they want them to be. Now, skincare products can actually speed up the fading process. So if you're doing a lot of skincare, there's a possibility that they can really fade completely or a significant amount depending. They say, unlike other forms of permanent makeup, you can baby step your way into fake freckles or freckle tattoos, since it is not so much as permanent as the others, as it fades as much as, you know. I'm mixing my words. So let's move on to some potential risks. So according to Dominique Bossavet, who does this, she says that freckles are impossible to maintain. Every one of these really requires, like any of these that I talk about, really does require touch-ups, but these are a lot trickier because they can fade unevenly. And, you know, that's what they say when it comes to this. This is also one of the cheaper ones when it comes to any sort of cosmetic makeup, permanent cosmetic makeup. I'm losing my words here. Keep up with me if you can. But this one will only cost you about $200. Now, that's still not cheap, don't get me wrong, but that's a lot cheaper than a lot of these ones that we've just talked about. And this one I've actually watched a few videos of people going to do this and then watching the healing process as well. This is something you really need to take care of, and you cannot, like a lot of these, you can't put makeup over it while it's healing, but this one could be difficult for a lot of people since you know, they're on your face, and they can be pretty dark when you get them done, and they will get red and they will get itchy, just like anything else will, and they can swell as well. So just keep that in mind when it comes to this. It may be cheaper, it may be fun. This is something that can kind of slowly bring you into the world of cosmetic, permanent cosmetic makeup. If you're just trying to try something out, this might be, you know, the way to go. It's got the same risks as everything. There's a possibility of bacteria or infection. So just once again, and I'm going to say this a million bajillion times, is just do your research when it comes to this. Find somebody who's done this before. Find somebody who has a lot of patients who are really, or clients, excuse me, who are really happy with their results and love the way it looks and all that kind of stuff. And with all of these, go in for a consultation before anything. Don't just go in and get it done. Go in for a consultation, talk to somebody, find somebody that you click with, and that's, you know, along the same wavelength as you, and that can really explain to you the process and everything that's going to happen, and, you know, everything in between when it comes to that kind of thing. Just keep that in mind, with any of these, but with this one as well. Once again, this one is going to fade a lot, and you might have to go in for multiple touch-ups depending on how you feel. But if you're just kind of going in to try it out and you're like, maybe I'll just try it, and you don't like it, it's going to fade a lot faster than anything else on this list. Like, it really is when it comes to this. So once again, just keep that in mind. It's gonna fade pretty fast compared to a lot of these. So if you don't like it, it is going to go away. And this is something you can cover with makeup, if you're really, really not a fan of it. Just be careful when it comes to any of these. I personally, like I said, wouldn't do this. This is not for me. I'm a lot weary for myself personally on the side of permanent makeup, since I'm going to say this a million times too, I am a makeup artist, and I just like to play around a lot, and this could hinder me playing around in a lot of different ways. So just keep that in mind too. If you're really not sure, you want to see how you'd look with it, try a filter or just draw some on yourself. There are so many different ways. There are actually products dedicated to making fake freckles. There's a product called Freck. I think also Lime Crime has a specific product that is for fake freckles as well. And these things can give you very natural looking freckles, while using makeup instead of doing something permanent or just drawing them straight on with pencil or something along those lines. Just keep that in mind. I'm going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk about some more permanent cosmetic makeup procedures and stuff along those lines.
Want to find out what movies to go see? Then check out the GSMC Movie Podcast. It's your ticket to the latest movies, whether it's a new blockbuster event, romantic, comedy, or action flick. This show has got it all covered. They talk some what to go see now, don't bother, what's hot on Netflix, and everything in between. That's GSMCpodcast.com/movie-podcast. When it's all about the movies, it has to be this new show. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
GSMC Beauty Tips podcast. Now, before the break and this entire podcast, we've been talking about permanent makeup. Different types of permanent makeup that you can get, the risks involved, what is involved in general, and the pricing, like a general pricing, not so much the actual, pricing, because it will differ everywhere. Now, we had just talked about freckle tattoos, and we've also talked about microblading, lip blushing, or lip tinting, permanent eyeliner, and scar camouflage. Now, I want to talk about something that's very kind of controversial when it comes to permanent makeup, and that is permanent concealer. Now, this is actually a treatment that most professionals don't recommend pursuing. They say don't do it no matter how tempted you are. Now, I want to quote something from a professional named Jackie David. And this is about this permanent concealer. He says, "I haven't done it, but I assume that it's about an hour max. I would never recommend anyone doing permanent concealer. It does not fade nicely on a lot of clients, and it ends up looking textured like cottage cheese. And because of the formula of the color that's deposited into your skin, you can use lasers later in life if you wanted to tighten things up. Or you can't use lasers later in life if you wanted to tighten things up." And so this is it's just something that a lot of these professionals actually don't recommend. And it's a lot like our lip blushing or tinting, where they are mixed with scar camouflage, where they're making the color specifically match to your skin to put it in, but it's got the same kind of cons as scar camouflage, but can be a lot worse. And that is a very, very, very sensitive area. And let's talk about the healing process. So they say there's actually you get no serious downtime. No makeup or sun exposure for 24 hours after the treatment. So you gotta get out of that sun. You can't go out, you can't do that because it can really kind of mess things up, and it's just not worth it. Now, the risks associated with this are a serious fade, discoloration, an inability to get laser treatments after. So I don't know. This one just is something that I wouldn't recommend, but I really wanted to put it on the list because slowly it's been becoming more and more popular as time has been going on. And I wanted to bring it up because it is not... it does fall in this category. It does fall in the category of permanent makeup, and it is something you can get done, but it is pretty dangerous, and a lot of professionals actually don't recommend it. Plus, you could just use concealer. Concealer works just as well to hide your dark circles. There are concealers of all textures, all types, all lightness or fullness that can give you that coverage you need to color any sort of, to cover any sort of discoloration that you do have. And color correcting is great too. I've talked about color correcting in a lot of my different, podcasts here, at the GSMC Beauty Tips podcast. And, color correcting can be a lifesaver if you know how to do it. And it can really help eliminate the dark circles under your eyes if that's what you're looking for. I think it's a lot better than possibly getting a texturized cottage cheese looking treatment that could fade to something that you're not happy with and end up being even more discolored than it was before you went and had this procedure. I don't know. This is definitely not something I would ever do. This is something I would stay a million miles away from because this is dangerous and a lot of people don't really recommend it. Plus the skin under your eyes, like I just said, is so thin, and like I'm already so careful when it comes to the skin under my eyes or a client's eyes or anything like that because it is so thin. It's some of your thinnest skin on your face. And getting multiple, because you do need to have multiple treatments to get this done. It is like the lip tint in a way, because it's not going to be a one and done thing. You do have to keep going because they are adding just light amounts of pigment in there to build up to the point that you're looking for. So it's not a one and done thing. It's not this could last 2 to 3 years. It could be great for you, but you're taking a big risk when it comes to this. Now let's talk about some pricing when it comes to this specific procedure. So I want to talk about, this depends on the size of the area and the technician itself. So this is like anything else where it is going to depend on where you are, who you're going to, that kind of thing. But it's also going to depend on the area that you're getting this done and the size of the area that you want covered. So as a rough estimate, you're looking at around $800 to $2,000. That's not cheap. I mean, none of these that we've talked about are very cheap. I think the cheapest one we had was the freckles, but still they're not cheap. This is something that is permanent to semi-permanent, or this one is more on the permanent side, but all of these are permanent to semi-permanent type of things and things that you should really sit down and think about before you go do them. They're not as intense as going in and getting some sort of full-blown procedure done on your face or wherever, but it's still something that you should take in consideration that there are issues that are possibly linked to each of these and whether you're actually a good candidate for each of these. And I honestly am not 100% sure if anybody is really a good candidate for this, permanent concealer. That's just my 2 cents when it comes to this. It just makes me so nervous. I just don't know why. It makes me so nervous. There are a lot of videos on people doing all of these procedures, and I've gone through and I've watched a bunch of them. I've seen them before, and when I heard about permanent concealer, I was like, I gotta know what this is, So I went out and I watched a few videos on people getting permanent concealer, and yes, it kind of makes a difference, but it's not making a difference enough in my personal, from my personal standpoint, to really think that spending anywhere from $800 to $1,000 or $2,000 is worth it, and the possibility of everything going wrong on top of that, I feel like is just, there's too many risks when it comes down to this permanent concealer. I would do the freckle tattoos in a heartbeat over this. It is very similar to the scar camouflage, but I think the scar camouflage, at least to me, has a little bit more of a meaningful purpose because it's really trying to kind of just bring back life to you, and you're feeling a little bit better about yourself because you don't have these scars that you possibly got from an accident or something like that. And so I think that the scar camouflage is a little bit more, it's a little bit on the more meaningful side than just getting permanent concealer. And if you do your makeup and you put concealer on every single day anyway, I really don't think that getting this procedure is going to stop you from doing that, because it's part of your everyday routine if it is, if it is. And so I really don't think that this is necessary, but I definitely wanted to throw it in here since it is, it's part of this. It's not cheap, It's not cheap. It's part of this. It's all part of the permanent makeup family, I think. And, I want to emphasize all of these just to you guys, so you guys can, even if you're thinking about it, maybe it'll open your eyes to, some things you didn't know about it, or, maybe it's showing you things that you can do and things that you shouldn't do as well. I'm going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk about some more permanent makeup stuff.
The Golden State Media Concepts Travel Podcast, the show that gives you advice on everything travel. We explore places you've always wanted to go, as well as giving tips for traveling in those places. We'll give you advice on the best sites for travel tips, information, and discounts. Join us as we travel the world, explore cultures, and meet new people. The Golden State Media Concepts Travel Podcast has got you covered. Download the GSMC Travel Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back to the GSMC Beauty Tips Podcast. Now, before the break and this entire podcast, we've been talking about permanent makeup. We talked about microblading, lip blushing or lip tinting, permanent eyeliner, scar camouflage, freckle tattoos, permanent concealer. Now, I want to move on to two other ones that I actually couldn't find a lot of information on, which makes me very skeptical on if they're okay to have or not. Now, these, I did see a video of one of these, and the other two I could not find much information except for websites that were actually trying to sell you what I'm talking about. So let's start out with permanent eyeshadow. Now, apparently permanent eyeshadow is a thing. I watched a few videos on it, and it doesn't look good. It doesn't. So in my personal opinion, I would just completely shy away from it. And I did see on a few websites that, this is a thing, but it's extremely difficult to do, and people should only go to a professional who knows how to do this, and that kind of thing. And, yeah, no. I just couldn't find, I could find a lot of videos of people doing it, but I never found a result that was really grand, I guess. And on top of that, I really couldn't find much other information besides videos on people actually doing the procedure itself and websites trying to sell me, permanent eyeshadow, which I'm not gonna do. And this other one that I found, well, I guess it's other two that I found are permanent blush and permanent contour. Now, these apparently are a thing, especially permanent blush, but I couldn't find anything, any information about how they go about doing it or anything like that. All I could find was websites trying to sell me permanent blush and contour. And these were websites that were permanent cosmetic websites, so they were legitimate websites, but it makes me really weary when you can't really find a lot of information about these. I don't know if it's just, I don't know, it's just, it makes me a little weird about it. And I couldn't find a lot of, or if any, photos of permanent contouring or permanent permanent blush. But, it is a thing. They are things. And maybe I would just recommend to stay away from them since it's really, I don't know, iffy. Also, just in general, when it comes to eyeshadow and it comes to blush and contour, these are things you can do at home easily before you're going out or something like that, and you don't have to wear it all the time. See, the issue I have with the idea of permanent contour is the fact that you're contouring your face to chisel your face and to accentuate features that you want to accentuate or sink in more. And you can do that easy with contour. You can do it so much easy with just makeup. But, if you go and get perfect, like permanent contour, I'm worried that it won't be the shape that you like, and then you're stuck with this contour and you can't change it up at all. Like, maybe that was the way you liked your face looking, but as time goes on, it's not looking too good. And that to me is just a big issue. And that's how I feel about blush as well. You can always add a little bit of blush. You can put on a lot of blush. You can do whatever you want with actual makeup blush. And I just think the idea of permanent blush makes me a little on the nervous side. Now, permanent eyeshadow, like I said, every single photo and video that I saw, it's just, it doesn't look good, and you're gonna always have that on your eyes. So if you want to do a different eye look, you're gonna have to completely cover up whatever tattoos on your eye, and then you can do it. And that just I don't know. As a professional, as I've said a million times in this podcast alone, as a professional makeup artist, I personally like to play with shapes, and I like to play with colors, and I like to play with all sorts of things, not only on myself, but on, clients and other people just in general. And there's so much you can do and so much you can change up with just a look. And if you're putting on this permanent eyeshadow, you're getting this permanent eyeshadow done, you're kind of stuck in that one look for a hot minute, for a very long time. And like I said, I think the only way that you could really cover it up is if you're going to go and, put a very opaque primer on, or maybe even have to color correct depending on the color that's on your lid. I did see a lot of darker colors that were put on the lid that made me a little, I don't know, his smoky eye for the rest of your life. No, thank you. But, it's just, I don't know. These are things that can be so easily done at home, so easily put on and taken off, and you don't need this professionally. These are things that can be played with. Maybe you thought you liked that eyeshadow look, and then you have that eyeshadow permanently on you, and you're like, no, this is not what I liked. This is not how, I'm not feeling this, and that's the same with this blush and this contour. And that kind of goes for everything too when it comes to this. Like microblading, you might like the shape of the eyebrow when you do it, but as time goes on, maybe you want to switch your eyebrow up and you're kind of stuck with that shape to work around, and that can be an issue. The same with the lip blushing and tinting. I think that can be a little bit easier to hide, but there are a lot of risks and pain involved in that. Permanent eyeliner is the same. And it all depends on the eyeliner as well, like what you're getting done. You're kind of stuck with that line forever, and it can be a challenge if something's messed up to fix it. Like, it can be a serious challenge to fix something like that. Scar camouflage, if it's gone great and you're doing great with it, then good for you. But like I had said earlier, there's a possibility of pigment changing, and it can leave a weird splotch on your face or wherever you've got this scar that you're trying to camouflage. And once again, that can be an issue. Freckle tattoos actually can be easily covered up. So for me, this one, I think just in general for me, these freckle tattoos seem to be like, if you really just kind of want to try like permanent, semi-permanent makeup, like that's the way to go, is the freckle tattoos. Now, I honestly want to know if any of you guys out there have had any sort of permanent makeup procedures done before, in any capacity, even if it's something I didn't talk about today. I'd love to hear from you guys. I'm always on the social medias, which is at GSMC_beauty tips on Twitter and the GSMC Beauty Tips Facebook page. I'm on those at all times. Love to talk to you guys. Love to see your guys' looks. Send me looks and let me know if you've had any of these done, or if you're thinking about getting these done and this was informative, or if you're 100% no on these and why. I think I pretty much said in this that I'm no on these personally for myself, just because I like to change things up and play around very, with just regular makeup, and I don't want something that might hinder that, just personally. Let me know, because these are really interesting to me. I did think about the microblading for a minute there. And I was thinking about it. I was kind of looking at prices. Like I said, there was a place near me and I was like, maybe I'll do this. And then as time went on, I realized I can just do whatever I want with eyebrow products. And, I don't really need this permanent or semi-permanent base for that. So that's just for me. I want to know what you guys think. Once again, I am on the Twitter at GSMC_beauty tips and the Facebook GSMC beauty tips. I'm always on those. Love to hear from you guys. And I want to thank you guys so much for listening to me ramble about these permanent makeup, procedures and just different aspects about them. I was thinking about it just in general, and I thought it would be a really fun topic to bring up to you guys, and maybe you have some fun things to tell friends who are thinking about it too. And seriously guys, once again, I want to thank you so much for listening to the GSMC Beauty Tips podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Colleen, and I'll talk to you in the next one.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Beauty Tips Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of our shows from the GSMC Podcast Network, from health and wellness to entertainment and life and happiness to sex and relationships. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Golden State Media Concepts Beauty Tips Podcast.